Welcome to this Tab Media special report on some research activities taking place with the Baptist paper. I'm your host, Jennifer Rash. Joining me is co-host and content editor, Shawn Hendricks. Welcome, Shawn.
Great to be here, Jennifer. Thanks.
All right. So the Baptist paper staff, we have been diving into some archive files. We've spent lots of hours listening to audio files from 2009 and 2010. The Great Commission Resurgence Task Force. I say we and joke. Shawn's done pretty much all of it. But the Great Commission Resurgence Task Force from 2009, 2010 in Southern Baptist life. Lots of files. Gosh, hours and hours and hours. They were sealed for 15 years, and they became available in June of 2025. And yes, the Baptist paper staff, we were the first ones to crack open those files and start listening. So we have been working on that. Shawn, thank you. So much work. You have been listening and taking notes and reporting and then writing articles. So
if I can be completely transparent, I'm really a reluctant, in some ways, participant in this because this was something that you had your eyes on for a while. And I saw that you had done you'd spent like 3 or 4 days at the library, like right after it was released.
Right.
And I was like, I have no, like, this the thought of listening to all that. But I soon realized how massive it was,
right,
and that how much time you had spent just to get through, what was it, one meeting? Or was it even the full meeting?
Well, it was the very first meeting, and it was 11 CDs with hours and hours. And I did.
You came in special to do it.
3.5 days.
Yeah.
And without breaking, just straight.
And I'm sitting 18 miles away. I can see the skyline from the top of the hill where I live. And I'm thinking, I'm really set up to do this, to go. And I used to work for Baptist Press. I used to work downtown. And in a lot of ways, it was really, I enjoyed going back downtown. I loved the drive for some reason with the traffic and everything. But I got into it, and I started listening to these voices, these heavy hitters, so to speak, these folks that are leaders throughout the convention, and I know where they are today, but then to see where they were then and to see to listen to what they were saying was really interesting. And I guess you got to be a little bit of an SBC nerd to enjoy some of it. Because my wife, I'd have conversations. She's like, "Are you going downtown again tomorrow?" And I said, "Yes." And I go, "I really kind of look forward to it. It's kind of therapeutic in some ways because I walk some of the same route. Like during lunch, I would walk a little bit of the route I did when I worked downtown. And so and it wasn't every time I did that, but I just kind of enjoyed to do. I loved being downtown, but then also the staff at the Library and Archives, Taffy Hall, she is great and really easy to work with. She'd check in, make sure I'm still alive.
That's right.
Room. She's like, "Shawn, you doing okay in there?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing all right."
I know.
So it was, in some ways, it was really a fun and neat experience and way more interesting. You're talking about a 15-year-old meeting. So
you really are. And the so they were files that were recorded on CDs. And, more and more places now, being able to play a CD is interesting. So you're right. The staff at the Library and Archives would have to get us all set up so we could listen. And this is all housed inside the SBC Executive Committee building in downtown Nashville. At this point, everything's still there. And so, as Shawn said, he lives close by. I drove in from Birmingham, Alabama on that initial audio listening adventure, and then we were like, wow, this is going to be a while. I was a little bit optimistic, I guess, in the fact that I'm going to be there for 3-4 days. I'll be able to knock out at least half of this thing, right? No way. I made myself make it through the very first meeting.
Well, you're talking about one disc can have three or four tracks, and each track can be up to an hour and 15-20 minutes. And so some of them, though, there would be one track that maybe was only 5 minutes because it just continued a little bit long. I don't know how they divided all that up, but sometimes it would be a really short clip.
I couldn't quite figure that
either. But you never knew what you were going to get. It's like a box of chocolates. You open it up.
You're right.
And you don't know. It's like sometimes it's just one big long hour and 15-20 minute discussion, and then that's it. That's all there is on that disc. That was like the final one, I think. Well, maybe the final one did have 2 tracks, but I think there was one that just had one long track. So.
Well, and you have officially Made it to the end.
Yes, and I was so excited. I called Jennifer right after I got home. I'm like, I am done. I said, I may have to go back and do some follow-up.
Right.
Because there was a lot of it. I was listening to the last discussion, and of course, at that point, I've heard they've all discussed a lot of that already. And so some of it was kind of rehash, and they were fine-tuning every little word that was going on. And so some of it was like, do I really need to get into the weeds? That was the big decision, how in the weeds do I get on this? And I really decided to do kind of a, was it 30,000-foot view of a meeting.
Right.
That just trying to, so that, like you said, it's inside baseball, and a lot of people aren't going to understand, are really, they're going to like, they're going to kind of glaze over. So you try to pick out the parts that are really interesting and give you a little bit of a glimpse into the personalities and what is going on with that person in their life. Like, because we had, and we talked about this earlier, about there were different task force members that had different things going on in their lives. Like, one had just gotten married, one was having, his wife was having a baby, one, his daughter had taken her life unexpectedly, tragically.
All that was happening right then.
And so you just had a lot of different, life goes on, and a lot of things were going on in these people's lives, but they were so committed to being there. It was such an important topic and issue that they didn't want to miss. They needed to be there. So.
And it was 22 members, right? 22 task force?
23 total.
23
with
total.
Johnny Hunt.
Okay. So just for context, Johnny Hunt at that time was pastor of First Baptist Church, Woodstock, Georgia, and had been elected as the president of the Southern Baptist Convention. At his first meeting, he named a task force. There's lots of history, and we have this in the article, so you'll have to go read the rest of it. But there was a reason why he came with this concept, and it stemmed from lots of discussions with several leaders deciding that the Great Commission was no longer as important in their minds in our churches, which is interesting to me to see how they got there. But he wanted the Great Commission to be important again, and so he wanted a task force. And we Southern Baptists are good at the task force, right? So he appoints Ronnie Floyd as the chair of this task force. And
I believe they're pretty good friends. They all know each other.
Well, and once you look at the list of the members of the task force, you can kind of see the connections too as well. And I don't know about for you, but it was kind of neat to see some of the task force members were very young, up and coming, and then you see who they are now and what they've done. It's kind of interesting to see that even in the moment, Johnny Hunt, Ronnie Floyd, all who were naming these task force members, even were kind of already seeing ahead who would be leaders. And that it's kind of interesting to watch all that play out. But so Johnny appoints this task force, names Ronnie Floyd, who was at that time a pastor in Arkansas, would later become the president of the executive committee for a stint. All of this was playing out with a very short runway to turn around all the meetings that they were to have.
7 months.
Wow. Yeah. And to come back at the very next annual meeting with their findings, their results. What are they going to do about this? So they did. They had to work really, really hard. But they put, with Johnny Hunt as an ex officio member, they had 22 task force members. That's a really big task force to try to keep everybody focused.
It is. In fact, that makes me think they had to have a strategy. They ended up doing a strategy team, coming up with
what was it, about eight people, right?
People.
Yeah.
Ronnie Floyd was pretty transparent and naturally so. And let me just throw this out there real quick. I was really impressed with the way Ronnie handled that many people in that meeting in that short a time, that broad of a topic. Your hat has to go off to him and how he navigated all of those moving parts. And he admitted at times that it was an overwhelming thing, and he can't do it on his own. Nobody can do that, come up with all that. And so he did have some people that he appointed to be kind of his inner circle, so to speak. And that doesn't, you don't do that without some criticism of like, okay, these meetings going on out, behind the scenes, so maybe some might have some issue with that.
Because on that note, the main meetings were recorded.
Right.
However, these strategic team meetings that you're referring to, where there was the 8 people. They would
Right.
meet the meetings between the meetings, if you will.
Yeah.
Those were not
idea.
recorded,
No
so
idea
we
what
have
they said.
we
Yeah.
have no idea.
He would allude to them. He would allude to. It sounded like they really covered a lot. And Ronnie said that he ate, breathed. Slept this for a long time. It was part of his life. It just consumed him a lot. And so there was a lot of discussions going on behind the scenes just to pull all this together into this concise report. Oh, and what I was going to say is that they had this short amount of time, and I allude to this in one of the stories, is that Albert Mohler said, we can do all these great things, but if the convention doesn't pass it,
Right.
Why did we take all this time to do this? So they really tried to condense it into a report that was really that the messengers, that everything could get done. It was self-contained in a meeting where they didn't have to come back and revote. That was their goal.
Oh, that's right.
They wanted to present a report that was adopted, that was approved by messengers, and that they didn't have to come back and get a revote on anything. That was the goal, to go in with that because they wanted to be done. They wanted to wipe their hands clean of it. They were exhausted.
Right. I can't imagine those intense moments and months, like you said, with real life stuff happening. I remember in the very early CDs, Ronnie Floyd mentioned several times, we have a lot to do already. Our lives are busy. We are managing and serving
big churches, big organizations, big seminary. Yeah.
So they were. But I was impressed with not only the way he managed it, as you're talking about, but he also brought in just helpers for himself. So he had some of his church staff members. He had people he had hired that were doing a lot of the organizing and recording and all the different things. So there were probably 3 or 4 people that they were named and introduced, and so they're acknowledged, but they were really kind of behind the scenes. So they did have a team helping them. It wasn't just the names that we're seeing in there doing the work. Other people were helping. But we have all of these articles, and you can read all of the information on how we pulled highlights. We obviously didn't write everything that we heard, but we tried to pull highlights for you. Again, you're listening to Jennifer Rash and Shawn Hendricks with the Baptist Paper, sharing about what we've learned, what we found as we listened to the audio files from the 2009-2010 Great Commission Resurgence Task Force meetings that took place over 7 months, hours and hours and hours. Hats off to Shawn for sticking with it and driving into the Nashville traffic to go to the Baptist building to pull these off. And Taffy Hall, thank you for just working with us and keeping us hydrated and ready to roll. You're so
and
kind.
Chocolate too. She had a nice bowl of chocolate.
Oh, I know. She was so
but...
kind, so very kind. These are available for anyone who would like to listen to them. You just have to make an appointment, and she'll set you up. They are very accommodating. They're at the Historical Library and Archives at the Baptist Building, the Executive Committee Building, downtown Nashville. And we'll have in the show notes a little bit more information about that and how to get in touch and the link to find more information. But we were able to put all of this together and highlight articles that you can find on thebaptistpaper.org. You also will see them in the print edition of the Baptist Paper, and we'll probably have more items coming out in the future. But our goal is just to make sure that this was basically archived for history in a way, because how many people are going to go to Nashville and sit and listen to this many hours of audio files? And again, that was funny, and Shawn and I talked about this before, about they actually reference that a lot in these meetings where they say they chose 15 years to keep them sealed. They unsealed them in June of 2025. And again, shout out to our team for being the very first people to listen to these unsealed archives. But, they made reference to and even joked about the fact of how many people would actually listen.
I think, Aiken was pretty key. It commented, Danny Aiken, that he referred to the peace. What was it? The peace
committee.
The peace committee.
Yeah. The audio files.
He said, "How many people listen to that?"
Right.
He said, me, Al, and a doctoral student.
Right.
And they were just joking about that.
So
who is going to be interested. But it was also interesting that they still wanted to push it off more than 10 years because Danny was saying no one's going to care in 10 years. Of course, in 10 years they were doing a big study of it. If that was out right around the
that
time,
would have been
imagine
interesting.
if it did, the timing on that.
And was that
That's when they were asked for the release of it.
They tried to get it early, right?
Right.
Didn't they ask for it?
I'm not sure.
Somewhere along the way.
That's a good question.
I think there was at one point there was a request for it to be released early, and they voted it down because they said, no, we chose the 15 years on purpose. But in the very first meeting, they voted for 10 years. And then by the last meeting, they had changed it.
Right, the last thing Ken Whitten
because you
said,
heard that, right? You heard him say that, right?
Ken Whitten on the committee said, so when are we going to release this? And there was some confusion about what he was specifically talking about. It was like the audio.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, Ronnie said 10 years. And I think Frank Page heard that and thought that Ken was maybe vying to have it released sooner. And he said, well, he was just joking. He said, well, partially joking probably. Well, I wouldn't have said half of what I said if I knew it was going to be released before that. And they all laughed. And so there was definitely some uncomfortableness with the 10. And everybody, at that point, Ronnie was like, well, when are you 15? And everybody's like, 15. Everybody. I mean, you heard 15 throughout the room.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That number. I think that was, and then Al Mohler joked, he said we should make it like the Warren Commission where it's not released until 15 years after the last committee member dies.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. That's
Everybody thought that was pretty funny.
That's
the room
good.
erupted in laughter. And there were a lot of lighthearted moments. Jennifer and I have talked about this before, and it just stood out to me. When they had the executive state Baptist convention executive directors come in for a meeting, there was a lot of questions being asked by the committee. And I remember J.D. Greer asked John Sullivan, just a question about why are state conventions important. And John, Dr. Sullivan gave a really lengthy response to why he thought all the different things state conventions could do, all the things they could do overseas and with missions, because that was what JD was trying to get at. At the very end, he finishes it up. He says, by the way, I have socks older than you. And everybody, the room just everybody thought that was funny. But I included that in the story, one of the stories, because one of the task force members later mentioned that he found that kind of dismissive. And I think that anything that I included that maybe was a little bit lighthearted, it was because I felt like it was a moment that shaped a little bit of the decisions that they were making. And I tried not to be, there was a lot of things that were just kind of funny and quirky that you could have put in there, but did it really have anything to do with the final decision that was decisions that were made? And that's what I tried to come down to. How did this affect what was discussed here, affect the final decisions that were made? Well,
and you can imagine any kind of meeting like this over time, and you get used to the fact that this is being recorded, and you almost forget about it, and it's going to be years before it's listened to, and you assume no one's going to listen to it anyway. There were some heated conversations, and there were some moments where people would take a stab or here or there at someone or something. I think we found that a lot of times when the person was not in the room that maybe was being discussed, there might have been a little bit harsher ways of describing the situation than maybe when the person was in front of them. And I guess that we all do that, though, right? I guess in a way,
yeah. There were definitely, everybody was coming in. I mean, they're human. We're talking about people here. So they're going to bring in personal feelings about things. And so there were some strong feelings about bureaucracy, about state conventions, about the executive committee, about leaders. There were strong feelings about they recognized that there were good things going on, but that there was also some bureaucracy that was getting in the way of ministry. And some had some very personal feelings about how their churches were treated related to CP giving, and that they maybe felt pressure that they, some people didn't feel like they were giving the right percentage, a higher percentage, and they took offense to that because they're like, we have a big church, we give to a lot of different things. And so that was one of the discussions about Great Commission giving and why there shouldn't be any, whatever you give to the cooperative, whatever you give to a cause, to the IMB, that should be celebrated, and that should, hats off to you for, whatever. And and so there were a couple, at least there were some that just felt really strongly that they shouldn't be criticized.
Yeah.
They didn't like that criticism
and
of
the
how
more
much their church gave.
Yeah, and the more, again, I only listened to that first meeting myself personally, the first 11 CDs, that first meeting where they established everything, and then you picked it up from there and listened to all the rest of them. Again, thank you for that. Wow, hats off. But in talking with you about what you heard, and then what the articles you wrote, and then what I had heard, the more we got through those CDs and the audio clips, it seems like maybe the whole point of this task force was not so much what it sounded like in the beginning, but it actually all came down to money.
It did
it
come
all
down a
stemmed
lot
down
to money
just to
percentage.
money. Yeah.
And there was a lot of discussion about that and how they positioned things in the report. And that was one of the things, I remember Frank Page had mentioned that he was concerned when they were talking about listing off things, there was money seemed to rise to the top. And he said he thought there was concerns that wasn't going to resonate with pastors, that there was so much focus on money and that really you needed to focus more on ministry and baptisms and those numbers and being looking for the Lord to lead you in moving forward and not focused on making decisions based on money. Hope I articulated that
but again,
right.
all the people sitting in this room are dealing with, to some level, they're connected to one of the groups that are going to receive money. So your church people, everyday church people, putting their money in their tithing, or they're putting their offerings in the offering plate, right? And the churches then take that money and decide how much they're going to send through the cooperative program that end up at the state convention level and the SBC level that get distributed to
Came down
mission
to,
board.
They were trying to break it down, 1 penny.
Right.
Or was it 1 penny makes it to over to international missions, or makes it to
after they kind of go through all the things.
Different things.
And so then you've got the people around the table who are, many of them, benefiting from the money going into the offering plates that make those pennies that make their way to the executive committee that gets distributed at the percentage that the messengers decide, blah, 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 all the things, right? And so the Baptist life. But you've got members on this task force who are almost, if not yes, but almost attacking other areas that receive money. And so then you start listening and you go, okay, they're actually kind of trying to position themselves to say, hey, my ministry is more important than your ministry. And what does your ministry actually do again? And help, so they're all kind of doing that. So it was interesting to listen to, because I get it. I get that they're all trying to make sure that the money's being used, or at least I hoped they were. That was their goal. But you have to wonder sometimes when they are actually benefiting from it, should they have been sitting on that task force? Because there's a conflict of interest. And I kept thinking and listening, going, there's a conflict of interest here, because they benefit from the money that they're talking about how to distribute, and they're picking on the people who are not,
And there was discussion about why just the EC and the North American Mission Board and IMB were the three main groups that received most of the attention and discussion. And it was why aren't the seminaries being brought up more, and what changes? And of course, you have two of the biggest SBC or the seminary presidents. You have Albert Mohler and Danny Aiken, both on that committee,
on the task force.
And they didn't. I'm not gonna say they didn't touch the seminaries. They did discuss it, but they basically every time was like, yeah, that's just too much of a political hot button to get into because each state that has a seminary, it's their baby, and they're going to be very protective, and do we really want to open this can of worms? And so they tried to say, oh well, we don't have time to go there. They which is interesting that they didn't do more. But like I said, I mean, it's
well, and
you've
we
got
don't.
6 seminaries. That's a lot to unpack, and you have to keep in mind. And they did bring us up. I mean, we're talking 7 months
Right.
to figure out a plan, and so they were looking at the biggest issues, and NAM was at front and center with just removing. They were looking for a new president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the same time that Jeff Hammond had just left. Yeah,
and struggled to get their feet under them in a lot of ways, and they had so many irons in the fire. Somebody referred to NAM as the Southern Baptist Convention junk drawer because it just had so many things.
Wow. Wow.
It had so many things. There were some great things in there, but it was lost under a lot of clutter of different things. And so, absolutely, they needed to streamline it and get some consistency. And if you look, still the same president. There's plenty of criticism to go around with any organization,
Oh,
with
you're
NAM,
right. You're right.
But there has been a consistency in what they are about, what they focus on, and focus and leadership, and that has stood. And also, if you look around the Southern Baptist Convention, if you go, there are a lot of young families there. Now, numbers and, you can look at all the numbers, try to break them down, but if you go and just observe, there are a lot of young families at the convention. And that was one of the things they were wanting to do. They were wanting to reach young pastors. And I think NAM has connected. This is just personal perspective here. I think that there's a lot of things that they wanted NAM to be able to do that they have done well. And like I said, there's lots of, critiques with any entity. But at the end of the day, there's some good things that you can definitely on both sides.
But you're right, though. The task force did end up spending a lot of energy on the North American Mission Board and
and
the International Mission Board. In fact, there was one moment where they did have that discussion that surfaces every few years. But should we combine the two mission boards? But it pretty much moved away quickly,
right? And they all
right?
agreed that wasn't worth. Getting into.
And then there was one glimpse, I think.
So they were so different. Each organization was so different and such a different culture that to try to bring it in, it would end up probably costing more. It would take more resources to figure out how
But I
to
remember
do that.
covering, I was part of the coverage team on all of this, and I remember that was one of the things that was the anticipation, will they come back and say, combine the mission boards. But so that was interesting to hear how they decided not to. And I know there was one glimpse where there was just a moment. The only thing really about the seminaries was should we go to just top 3 kind of thing. And like you said, that kind of moved away quickly.
Combine there were some different ideas thrown out.
And then, as we said earlier, too, those strategic team meetings that happened between the big meetings, we have no idea what all happened there. We have heard that there were some very heated discussions in those moments, but we didn't get to hear. We don't know for sure. We can't prove that. But those were not recorded. I do remember at the press conference, I was at that first press conference, and it was really weird, Shawn, hearing my own voice on there. So I'm on the audio file. Wow. And Shawn will go down in history as the one person who listened to everything. But but I remember there was a question about, hey, will there be things that happened that you won't tell us? Will there be aspects? And they assured at that moment, no, everything we do, we will come back and report. And then they did have these private meetings, so in between. So
a lot of them.
So we'll never know
Phone,
for sure on that.
In person.
Yeah. So anyway, lots and lots and lots. Oh my gosh, we have all the stories online. You can find them at thebaptistpaper.org. Great Commission Resurgence Task Force audio files unsealed after 15 years. I'm Jennifer Rash, host of Tab Media Special Report, and joining me today was Shawn Hendricks. Thank you, Shawn.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right.